about the semiotic analysis of dominant symbols in the Nigerian mass media. Now, we all know that over the years the economies have kind of merged into one another. The world is becoming a global village. So it has become imperative for various companies to foray into, get out of their homeland and foray into new countries for greener pastures. For doing this, the most important thing is advertisements. So they can communicate to the people in the destination country only through advertisements. And of course there are pros and cons about both the things. There are pros and cons about advertisements. Now, pros is of course that when you go to a new country, the country has no idea, the people over there have no idea about the kind of products that you offer or the kind of services that you offer. So in such a scenario, advertisements provide the ideal means through which you can communicate what your brand is all about or what your products are all about. Now the cons are very obvious. As advertisements, we all know come under fire all over the world because they try to convey messages which might be misleading or which might try to change behavioral patterns of people. If you take the example in the Nigerian context, Nestle introduced a baby milk formula which was highly publicized. And what this led to was that a lot of women stopped breastfeeding their infants and switched to the baby formula from Nestle. What is the significance of this entire research is that especially in developing countries, there is not much regulation on advertisements. I mean, for example, in India there are now regulations coming in where you cannot market directly to kids. However, in the Nigerian countries, in the developing countries such as Nigeria, there is no such regulations. So what this led to, again continuing with the Nestle example, what this led to was that this campaign was so successful that a majority of women stopped, switched to the baby formula, and which in turn led to their kids not developing fully or having complications with the growth. Now, even after this was established that this baby formula cannot be a substitute for breast milk, the women still continued with this. So this kind of shows how with rampant advertising, perceptions of people can change. Now, ads can be made. When a company goes into a new country, they can advertise their products in city-based. Now, they can either localize their ads, localize their messages to suit what the country's culture is, and just talk about it. The other thing is globalization, which is that whatever their core message was internationally, they bring that core message directly to the country and use that. This can also be called as standardization, wherein you just have one message. If I take the example of Nivea ad in India, if you would just see, they have taken up the exact same ad which they run in US or Europe, and they just replaced the main model with Arjuna Abad. So, and no other change whatsoever. So this kind of shows how standardization occurs. The third is a mixture of the two called globalization, wherein you keep the global message, but you try to tailor it to the country's specific needs. Again, we can take an example over here of Cornetto. Now, Cornetto talks about love stories all over the world. But when it came to India, in the Indian context, they modified, they continued with the brand image of revolving around love stories, but they kind of shaped it to suit the Indian context where there's a bit of playfulness involved in the relationship. Now, moving forward, we talk about the semiotic analysis. What exactly are semiotics? Now, semiotics are the study of linguistic signs which occur in psychology or epistemology in human thought through the evolution of history. It consists of two things, the signifier and the signified. Now the signifier are the physical objects which actually convey the message. For example, this bottle would be a signifier. The signifier would be what this actually means to people. So, for example, if you associate with a brand, let's say Kindle, and you think that it is, it represents purity or it represents refreshness, so that would be the signified aspect of what it is all about. Now moving forward, and this is established on three things: the perception, the interpretation, and the convention of communication. Now the perception is how we as individuals would see something, see the signifier, and we all of us think differently and interpret it in our different ways, which then lead to the general message that is formed. Now there are three assumptions underlying this. A, the society needs science to exist. B, science make up language. And C, science allow the society society to assign arbitrary meaning to the science. Now this we've seen in our classes as well, that there are a lot of arbitrary meaning assigned to various science. Moving forward, how do we assign meaning to science is called syntagm, which is again assigning arbitrary meaning, which is based on the cultural values of the society and the codes that govern these cultural values, the rules that govern these cultural values and their codes. Now syntax, if I give you an example of syntax, grammar is an example of syntax. It shows us how words are to be used in a sentence to convey meaning to other people. Now moving forward, there is a three-stage analysis of this. The first stage is identifying what the symbols are in the advertisement, the dominant symbols in the advertisement. The second stage is giving voice. The second stage is closer reading of these symbols to identify what they are trying to convey. And third is to interpret them to understand what are the cultural undertones combined with these symbols which the advertiser is trying to convey. Now they could be positive, negative or neutral dominant symbols based upon what kind of aspects of the society they touch. For example, if I talk about the Nigerian context again, so a positive context would be reinforcing the cultural values in Nigeria. A negative context could probably be trying to westernize the message that the company is trying to convey. Now we can take up a few examples over here. A company called Sharp, which produces audio systems, ran a campaign in Nigeria, and what it portrayed was that a couple was dancing to the tunes coming out from a Sharp audio system, and those were white people who were really enjoying standing very close to each other, and the advertisement had sexual undertones, which goes against what the Nigerian culture is all about. Another example of a contradiction would be nature being portrayed in the advertisements. Now, in the Western world, nature is considered as a force which needs to be conquered, and people need, for the betterment of mankind. Whereas in the Nigerian culture, it is considered as a force which is to be levered. And various advertisements in the Nigerian media show contradictory. Some of the companies try to show it in the Western context, and some of them try to show it in the Nigerian context. Now, Muskan will take forward with.
Talking further about examples of advertisements and symbols being used in the Nigerian context. So, as Mohit mentioned, there is always a positive and a negative side to any symbol which is used, and it depends on the perception of the viewer. So, if we talked about the Sharp advertisement. So they showed people dancing on top of the Sharp audio system. So that was to convey its strength, its solidity, and to differentiate it from counterfeit audio systems which were being manufactured in Nigeria and which were and still are prevalent in all the developing countries. So that way, to look at the couple, the fairness and the dancing, the sexual connotation is one way of looking at it, or you can look at it as portraying strength. Again, if you look at other examples like advertisements for banks, so they portray, they compels parents to save for their kids. So, and in that way, the advertisement is actually urging people to save, which is a good thing. But other advertisements, on the other hand, do propagate consumerism and lead to lesser savings. Also, there are some advertisements which use religious symbols to pursue people to buy their product or service. For example, in Nigeria, many advertisements were using Christmas symbols. So, which is taken in a bad tone because people feel that it is not about their product or the qualities which they are emphasizing, but actually selling products in the name of God. So, going in this flow and looking at a managerial condition which is using dominant symbols, we will talk about fairness schemes. So, talking about Fair and Lovely, when it started, it was established as that fairness is the one thing that every female requires, and they were targeting tropical countries where people are generally brown skinned. So initially it came up as a very good thing that yes, people want to become fair, and if they use this product they can look better, more beautiful. But the fact that the basic notation that they are propagating, that if you're fair means you're beautiful, if you're dark means you're not. That entire concept was taken in a very bad tone. So later they started equating fairness to confidence. They started equating fairness to getting married, getting jobs. So even now if we look at the Fair and Lovely ad, they have evolved over the time, but they are still talking about to become equal at par with the guy you're getting married to, or to become a model, to get a good job, you need to be fair. So even if they've used euphemism in terms of confidence, they're still propagating fairness. So while there is a positive note that okay, the product is allowing you to become fair, the overall aspirational value which it is creating is in itself wrong, that dark people should feel inferior to fair people. Also it is emphasizing the concept of colonialism. Already in India there is a feeling of more greater respect for fair-skinned people, and if such advertisements and products come up, they tend to re-emphasize that fact. And people tend to, like, it becomes a superior position for people who are fair. So that way, Fair and Lovely has the advertisement and their concept has always been under the scandal. Comparing it with the fairness schemes for men. So Fair and Handsome started with Imami Fair and Handsome. They started with ad campaigns portraying Shah Rukh Khan. And again, they just talked about why are you using women's fairness creams? Use a men's fairness cream if you're a man. But then they never talked about the qualities a man should have. They only talked about fairness. So it's just that, okay, instead of using Fair and Lovely, use Fair and Handsome. They're replacing Lovely by Handsome and only talking about fairness, not talking about any masculine characteristics. In contrast to that, if we look at the advertisements for Garnier creams or for Nivea creams, they also call themselves whitening creams or re-energizing creams. But what they propagate, they do not clearly state the term fairness. They will say it's an anti-tan, a de-tan cream or a dark spot removal cream. And also they have switched from fair models to models like Arjun Rampal, who actually fit in the original tall, dark and handsome concept of a man which we used to have long time back. So different products, actually Fair and Lovely, Fair and Handsome, Nivea, whatever you may take, it is actually the same composition, same product, a little few ingredients here, tweaked here and there. The product is the same, but the message that they convey and the kind of habit that they are trying to build. If you look at Nivea's deodorants ads also, so they say that deodorants are only for freshness. Deodorants are only to make you smell good, and to get girls is up to your ability, but deodorant will not get you girls. So that the fair and square message is conveyed. So that is how we have seen the evolution of advertisements in the fairness schemes category. So the dominant symbol is gradually changing, and probably Fair and Lovely might someday have to change the symbol reason why they can't explicitly do it is because they are thriving on the concept of fairness. So it is only till the time that dark people continue to believe that they are inferior to fair people can fair and lovely exist. Once dark people start feeling that no, there is nothing wrong with being dark, fair and lovely will not be able to thrive so well.
What now I will do will be something related to the framework that can be adopted for symbols across cultures. How will be symbolic cultural variations. I'll first begin with the framework that we are going to use. The framework will be intermediation concept. Basically, a symbol is intermediation between what we are and what we want to be. So this is what symbols use to qualify or convey the message. We will try to explain with the symbol of being shares as a symbol for our decision. And in two contexts, we will try to explain shares or states of a company. Yeah. First will be in context of India. The second will be in context of US. Usually, stakes or shares will be considered as a sign or symbol of belongingness as well as ownership. So, if let's consider a startup scenario where how any entrepreneur tries to raise money for his firm. The whole structuring will be based on financial structuring will be based on two elements, debt and equity. So, debt is the easy part which you can tolerate because it is based only on the concepts of interest that you pay upon your money. That is cost of capital. Second will be equity, but the trade-off with equity is that there is involvement of return on investment over a long time frame. Second important thing is that the element of control in the company. Whenever any entrepreneur business with a private equity firm or else a VC, the first thing the VC would bargain or negotiate for is the control of the company. So this element is the ownership. No startup entrepreneur will be in a good position or to share this control over the company because when the control of the company is getting diluted or split among many people, the company loses its focus or target or the mission that they stand for or what they work for. So this is the Indian context. Similarly, as of now, every startup entrepreneur is having a very hard time assuming with VCs and private equity funds. So what did in the US context we just discuss about Google, how they tried and tackled all these issues of how shares can be made into a different perspective, not just looking into ownership. They brought in one more perspective of belongingness and ownership into the share. So they symbolize shares to be element or representation of ownership and belongingness. So the element of belongingness is about just inclusive growth or sharing our profits, whatever, with any private equity firm or venture capitalists. So they, as in the interest of VCs or PE is completely covered with the element of belongingness because they invest and they get back the money what they want. It is if you invest X, you get back 5X. So private equity holders' interests are protected. At the same time, what they did was Sergey Brin and Larry Page, they made two kinds of shares for their company, Class A and Class B share. Class A had one voting rate each. Class B each share had 10 voting rates. So easily was whatever they tried or whatever they decided to do can be easily implemented to Class B share. So major chunk of Class B shares was held by Larry Page, Sergey Brin and Eric Smith. So nearly about 80% of the share holdings of the Class B pattern is still being held by these three people, so that the focus of the company is not diluted in any context. So this example of differential voting rights was brought forward by Google, and this element can be even used in our own Indian context of startups. The thing being, if the differential voting right is most covered in terms of two ways, that is, these can be effectively used by startup entrepreneurs to tackle PEs and VCs as Google did. Second will be the case of earlier Harshit discussed about Marti Udyog. In such context, any issue that arises from the labor union side will be something related that they are left out and they are not being made part of inclusive growth. So if at all this kind of differential voting like shares are available to labor unions as such in the context for any labor union. It is that they now get the feel that they are belonging to the company and they are part of the inclusive group. And now this the farmers that they feel they are a part of the group, and the larger picture, the context being the company is in a position to control all the rivers that is operating in any fossil fuel. So they are made to be a part, but they don't really understand the part that they just work for the for better top line and bottom line of the company. So these are just two examples of parallel era between US context and the Indian context, explaining how every symbol or share as a symbol is interpreted or can be interpreted in two different ways. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this attention.